What if Lou Lamoriello actually holds on to the 20th overall pick in this year's NHL Draft? Well, today we're going to talk about the Locked On NHL mock draft, and I'll tell you who I picked 20th overall and why. We've got all that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, feel free to email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever it is that's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYRVSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all off season long. That includes hirings, firings, trade rumors, the draft, free agency. If it's happening to the Islanders this summer, we'll have it covered for you on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. So much of what we've been talking about during the offseason involves possible trade moves and rumors about this player being available and the Islanders being interested or not interested, or should they be interested? And look, all of that makes sense. That's the time of year it is. But at the same time, what if the Islanders actually held on to the 20th overall pick? Friend of the show, Frank from North Patchogue, was thinking the same way I was when I was preparing for this show. Sent me an email. Hello, Gil. So glad you were back and doing your excellent podcast again. You've laid out just about every scenario on trading for players that can help this team. They indeed have to move some of those long-term, no-trade, expensive contracts to get some much-needed cap space. But would Lou do something else, like stay pat and use the three draft picks in the first two rounds to build back our non-existent prospect pool? I do not know how deep this year's draft is, but could this be another possibility that Lou could be thinking of? By the way, we should not bring back Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin. We need to use those resources to sign our younger RFAs. Stay healthy and take care of yourself. Frank from North Patchogue. Frank, first of all, thank you for the get well wishes, the email, and the kind words about the podcast. I truly do appreciate that. In answer to your question, would Lou do something else like stay pat? I think the answer is it's less likely. Is it impossible? No, but I think it's less likely. And I think the track record of 4 straight years trading away a first-round pick speaks for itself. And look, I am not going to say that any of the individual trades made by Lou Lamoriello, where he, parted with a first-round pick, were terrible, terrible trades in and of themselves. They added useful players. Kyle Palmieri just scored 30 goals last year for the Islanders. Bo Horvat. Need I say more about what Bo Horvat has contributed to this team? J.G. Pageau, certainly a contributor since he was acquired. You could talk about the extension Lou signed him to afterwards and whether or not that was a good idea at the amount and term. That's a different issue. But the 4 players he's gotten, Horvat, Palmieri, Pajot, and then Alexander Romanov, by trading away those first-round picks, they have all contributed and been a big part, really, of the Islanders' success or failure on the ice. It's not like he traded away, a first-round draft pick for Oliver Wahlstrom in trade, but, for a player who was here for a few weeks and then left, or who fizzled out and just never came through and contributed to the team's success. Okay. The reason I think that it's less likely that we see Lou hold on to this pick is that Lou Lamoriello has repeatedly said, and understandably so, he has repeatedly said that this team, he believes in the core. He thinks this team, doesn't believe in rebuilds. He thinks this team can win now. And whether you agree or disagree with that, and I think that the Islanders, if you've been watching the Stanley Cup final at all, the difference in not just skill level, but in the way the Islanders play consistently or inconsistently versus the way both the Oilers and the Panthers play, there is a big gap between the 2023-2024 Islanders and the same year's Oilers and Panthers. And look, hey, these are, after the playoffs, these are the 2 best teams in the league. So tough to argue realistically with that assessment that the Islanders have a long gap to close if they hope to be as good as these 2 teams. But that doesn't mean, and Frank, I think you did a very good job of pointing it out, the Islanders, as we know, have either the worst or very close to the worst, depending on who you read and believe and hear from, prospect pool in the NHL. And if that is indeed the case, and we have a lot of players 30 years old or older on this roster, you got to eventually start replenishing that prospect pool. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to compete in a couple of years, 3 years down the road, when the Islanders essentially are no longer able to, have these 30-something-year-old guys who are on the team now, your Pajots, your Palmieris, your Anders Lees, when they start to slow down even more and they are unable to contribute the way they are, you've got to have guys ready to come in and take over. Otherwise, the Islanders could end up being the next San Jose Sharks, Anaheim Ducks, Chicago Blackhawks, where, you're looking at 2, 3, 5 years of really bad teams on the ice with the hope that you're going to be able to get some really good draft picks, picking lottery picks where you're in the top 5, maybe even get lucky and win the lottery 1 year or 2 years and start to put together a team that, gets older together, matures, you figure out who's good, who's not good, and you move on. So if the Islanders keep the pick, look, this is an interesting draft. It's not as deep maybe as it was a year ago. There are 2 players right now, Macklin Celebrini, who is considered the consensus first overall pick, and then Ivan Demidov, who is considered the second consensus pick. And then you have a lot of players who are kind of bunched together and a lot of players who scouts and teams are going to disagree on as far as whether or not, this guy is 5th or 8th or 15th or 12th. there is not as much consensus on the big board after the top two. So if the Islanders do hold on to this pick, we're going to talk about the guy I selected. He will be the next player we're profiling. And I will tell you this, between now and the draft, which is about 10, 12 days away, I'm going to do more of these player profiles of people I think will be available with the 20th overall pick for the Islanders to choose until the Islanders either make that pick or trade the pick away, whichever comes first, right? I mean, that'll be the bottom line. But after the break, we will have my pick in the recently completed Locked On NHL mock draft round 1 for the New York Islanders, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you the scouting report on this player. We've got that. Plus, we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders with Samuel Bolduc, what was his season like and what lies ahead for him. And for our Islanders birthday of the day, a defensive, well, really a two-way forward who only played briefly for the Islanders in the late 2000s after being acquired at the trade deadline. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Policy Genius. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage, and some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius has no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. They have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs. Policy Genius helps you easily compare your options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. And their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step. Get peace of mind by finding the right insurance with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, quickly, the Islanders now, after the trade with the Blackhawks, have that 20th overall pick. And look, Celebrini and Demidov gone. With the third pick, basically, the Ducks went with Artyom Lashunov. Caden Lindstrom, 4th overall, goes to Columbus. 2 Iginla goes 5th in the draft. Zane Perrick goes 6th. Sam Dickinson, Zeev Bunham going 8th. Berkeley Catton 9th. Cole Iserman 10th. And then Carter Yaremchuk goes 11th. Costa Helenas goes 12th. Anton Siliev goes 13th. Beckett Sinicki goes 14th. Michael Brandsdeg Nygaard goes 15th. Adam Jurasek goes 16th. Igor Chernyshov goes 17th. Liam Greentree 18th. Trevor Conley 19th. And that leaves me with the 20th overall pick for the New York Islanders in this draft. So, drum roll, please, with that 20th overall pick. I went with winger Tariq Parashak of Prince George. He is a right winger, 6 foot, about 175 pounds, and he was my overall pick for the New York Islanders. And you look at his numbers, again, 6 foot is decent size, 175 pounds. Well, again, you expect players, he's only 18, just turned 18 in May. You expect guys like that to put on some size and some weight. Played 68 games for the Prince George Cougars of the Western Hockey League, scored 43 goals in 68 games and 105 points, was a plus 49. And I love this fact, 12 playoff games, 14 points, 6 goals, 8 assists there. So here's a guy, the Lethbridge native, actually came through and did a little damage, so to speak, for his team in the playoffs. And you kind of look at his scouting report, and basically 40 goals, 100 points. Excuse me. Finished in the top 10 in the league in goals, assists, and points. Second in shorthanded points with 8. And that, I think, is something that's very good. Now, he was on a line with 2 players who were veterans in the Western League, and he just fit in well with them. And here's what I love about this kid. He's got great hockey sense. He knows what to do when he doesn't have the puck. That, to me, is something that Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh and, before them, Lane Lambert and, Barry Trotz always emphasize. What does the guy do when he doesn't have the puck? And the scouting report on Parashak says he gets into the right spots at the right time to bang home rebounds, tap in backdoor passes, or get out in transition to give his D a stretch pass option on outlets without really cheating for it. He anticipates play offensively and defensively at a very high level, knows how to get open, and plays to his line mates' strength. Great wrister and one-touch shot from mid-range. Always goes to the net when the play funnels there instead of hanging out wide, and has skill around the net and in tight to his body when challenged by defenders. Nice touch passer and has the ability to handle the puck. Not a flashy skater, but he's fast, and not a great individual play creator off the rush, but with timing and good skill, he makes things happen offensively. To me, here is a guy who can give you some goal scoring. He can also be a setup guy. His size is good. His hockey awareness and his awareness of what to do when he doesn't have the puck is there already. And to me, that means that his biggest challenge to get from juniors to the NHL may be more about putting on a little more size. But that might be able to be done a little bit quicker than if you have to wait for both the size and the awareness and the hockey sense and the knowledge of the game, what to do when you're not lugging the puck. All of these things, I think, to me, make him a better Islander. To me, at this point, when your prospect pool is as lowly ranked as the Islanders, the key is to take the best player available. And because the Islanders don't have a lot of NHL-ready impact players here, a guy who might need a little less time to get NHL ready might even be a wiser choice. Is he the perfect choice? Maybe not. At 20, it's really hard. Again, the difference between, let's say, the 5th pick and the 25th pick in this year's draft, there's not a lot of consensus there. But for the reasons that I outlined, I just think this is the right move for the New York Islanders. Give them an offensive playmaker, a guy who's probably projecting as a second line guy who can help you on the power play, help you on the penalty kill. And, even if he's not ready to score right away in the NHL because he's good away from the puck, maybe you start him on your third line. And then when he gets a little more physicality, gets used to the size and speed of the NHL game, move him up to second, or if he really surprises, to the first line. I think all of these things are possibilities that the Islanders have to consider, and that's why I made Parachak my pick, 20th overall in this mock draft. Will Lou Lamoriello do the same? I still think he's more likely to trade the pick than keep it, but we'll see what happens. A lot of time between now and the draft. Well, not a lot of time, but a lot of things could happen between now and the draft, and I expect something to happen, even if it does occur on draft day. We have got more to get to on today's show. We will talk about Samuel Bolduc's season, whether he met expectations and what his role, if any, will be with the Islanders next year. We'll talk about that. We'll have our Islanders birthday of the day, all that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals, and more. You can bet on all of it on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you could use to bet on everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. And hockey fans, Islander fans, use your knowledge of the game of hockey and the NHL. Maybe you want to bet on the Conn Smythe Trophy winner as playoff MVP. Maybe you think that Florida is going to win the Stanley Cup. They only need one of the next 3 games to do it. Or maybe you've got a hunch Edmonton is going to roar back. You probably get some excellent odds on FanDuel about that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders every day. As you know, we've covered most of the team already, although we still have a couple of big names to discuss. Today, we do Samuel Bolduc, and Bolduc kind of at a crossroads, I would say, in his career. Played a career-high 34 NHL games this year, had 2 goals, 5 points, and, that was, well, needless to say, a little disappointing. He was a -4, had only 6 penalty minutes. One of his 2 goals did come on the power play. He had 32 shots in 34 games. That's a little lower than what he had last year. And he did block 40 shots, which was way up from last year's total, and had a career-high 44 hits. So 44 hits in 34 games for Samuel Bolduc. And, well, to me, the thing about Bolduc, this was a rough year for him. Here was a guy I think the Islanders really wanted to see him make an impact. And, he was an AHL All-Star a year ago. Came up midseason, had, 17 games, but he really struggled in the playoffs in 2023. And I think that kind of affected his confidence a little bit. And, he hasn't really produced much offensively in the NHL. And he just seems to be a little bit tentative. Played 25 games in the first half of the year in the 2023 part of last season. And really, once Patrick Waugh took over, there was not a lot of use for basically not a lot of use for Samuel Bolduc. And, he ended up playing 3 of the first 4 games while coached. And then from January 27th until the season finale, he did not see the ice. Now, the problem in my mind with this is that Bolduc, at the age of 23, and we know defensemen take a little longer to develop than your average, your average forward. The only way you get better is by playing. And you have a 6'4", 220-pound defenseman, former second rounder. He's out of options. You can't send him back down to the AHL without putting him through waivers. You got to get him into more action than 34 games in order to help him develop. He's either got to clear waivers and go down to the AHL, which is unlikely because someone will take a flyer on him, most likely. Or you have to play him in the NHL, let him take some lumps, but build up his confidence. And either he has to show you, hey, I'm ready for the NHL, or I'm not a part of the future plans of this team. And then you showcase him to trade him away before the deadline. I think those are realistically the options that the Islanders have with Samuel Bolduc. And Bolduc has 1 year left on his contract. He's making $800,000 a year. He is a low-cost option. He's a left-shot defenseman. Assuming the Islanders bring back Mike Riley, which most people expect they will, the question then becomes, whether or not Bolduc is good enough to earn that third pair defense spot on the left side. And if the answer is no, I would strongly consider dealing him at the end of training camp, because you got to get something for him before he just sits on the shelf, his development stagnates, and you end up losing him for nothing as a free agent or getting next to nothing for him in a trade. There are plenty of teams who are willing to take a chance on an inexpensive, young defenseman with good size and let him develop. And the Islanders, you know what? You may need to play him early in the season, let him take some lumps, but let him learn and grow, and then make a judgment come the trade deadline. I hope we see more of Samuel Bolduc next year, but that would mean he took a step forward. We'll see whether or not that happens, or he becomes yet another high draft pick by the Islanders who just doesn't pan out. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And, we have to go back a couple of days, but Saturday was the 51st birthday of former Islanders forward Dean McAmmond. McAmmond, a first-round pick by the Blackhawks in 1991, played for the Oilers, the Blackhawks, the Flyers, Flames, Avalanche, Blues, and Senators before joining the Islanders at the trade deadline in 2008-2009. Played 18 games for the Islanders, 2 goals, 9 points, and 8 penalty minutes, was a +5. Finished his career with the Devils in 2009-2010. Actually fell just 4 games short of 1,000 for his career, 996 games, 186 goals, 448 points, 490 penalty minutes, had 6 goals, 13 points in 46 Stanley Cup playoff games for Dean McAmmond. He never did win a Stanley Cup, but he certainly had a productive career for a guy who was a two-way or defensive forward. One of his better games with the Islanders, how about March 2nd, 2009 at the Old Barn? Islanders hosting the Colorado Avalanche. Andrew Raycroft, the goalie for the Avalanche. Jan Denis, the goalie for the Islanders. And our Islanders' birthday of the day, Dean McAmmond, opened up the scoring. His 5th of the year, John Simmons, Jeff Tambellini scoring, as that was the Islanders' 4th line in this game. And the Islanders end up winning this one by a score of 4-2. Dean McCammond had the goal. He was a +2. He took a penalty, and he had 3 shots on goal in just a little under 15 minutes of ice time. So Dean McCammond is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Every day there's tomorrow on the show. We will continue to scout some possible players the Islanders could take 20th overall in this year's draft, and we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders. We haven't done Matthew Barzal yet. We will get to Barzy on tomorrow's show. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and of course, let's go Islanders.